So, since 2007, we found out that there have been over 209 cases of groundwater contamination in Pennsylvania. We found this out not because regulators told us, because truth be told, they had been hiding the information from the public. It wasn't until the information got leaked that they finally had to come to account. So we know, one, that oil companies lie about the safety of their operations from this kind of thing because they were denying water contamination for years. And we also know from the case study in Pennsylvania is that you can't always trust your regulators. And let's think back about that influence of money in politics. So, it's not just Pennsylvania. It's a pretty widespread problem. 4 other states have confirmed water contamination. Texas, Ohio, Wyoming, and my heart, West Virginia, have all confirmed water contamination from drilling operations. And it's not just those states either, because this year the problem became local. So California halted the injection of fracking waste in aquifers in the Central Valley in July. The state ordered an emergency shutdown of 11 wastewater injection sites in the drought-wrecked Central Valley out of fear that oil companies had been pumping fracking fluids and toxic waste into drinking water aquifers there. And last month, in October, we found out that that's exactly what they were doing. Oil companies pumped 3 billion gallons of fracking wastewater into federally protected aquifers that are supposed to be regulated and protected by the Safe Drinking Water Act. And we know this because we obtained a Central Valley Water Board letter to the EPA, which confirmed high levels of toxic chemicals, arsenic, thallium, nitrates, in the water wells where they took the samples. Again, these are federally protected aquifers, but the oil companies injected their wastewater into them anyway. Imagine that. And the state is still investigating another 19 aquifers. So now we're talking about why a moratorium. And I'll wrap this up real quick here. Industry technology has outpaced our regulatory infrastructure. Most of Los Angeles' oil codes, which are mostly defunct, were written in the 1940s. LA no longer has a person on staff at the city to oversee its own oil operations, so we don't even have someone locally looking at this stuff. And we also know that these techniques present a huge challenge to the reliability of our water supplies in California, and that the chemicals involved in getting this oil pose an incredible risk to community health here in Los Angeles. So that's why we felt a moratorium was the most appropriate option for our city, and again, the moratorium proposed was for unconventional production techniques like this. So, what happened in September 2013? Council members Koretz and Bonin introduced such a motion. City Hall, a few months later, unanimously approved it, and that sent the motion to the city attorney to draft an ordinance to begin looking at some of the zoning code. And this past week, the city attorney and the planning department, after 6 months, released their recommendations. And they want to consider getting an expert consultant to consider overhauling the oil code. This hasn't come before the council just yet, which so it's likely the intent of the ordinance will change. It's not going to be a full-out moratorium on productions. It's most likely more going to be an exploration of whether or not some of these techniques are compatible within the city. So it's not going to shut down the whole industry. It's not going to threaten a whole bunch of jobs. It's really just the first step toward a process of really examining if we're making the right decisions by using these toxic chemicals in a densely populated region of 4 million people. And I think that's...
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there questions?
Do we want to do questions or wait?
We'll wait till the debate is over, then you can ask questions.
All right. And that's me.
All right, thank you very much. Next.
Jerry, lights. Jerry.
Up next we have Blair Knox.
In opposition?
Are you the pro fracking? Because I was the opponent of that.
Watch your mouth, Miriam.
Huh?
He's teasing you.
I'm the narrator.
Is that what there is? So we'll do that next. What is that? What is the Kittredge? It's not even on the...
Yeah, it is. The old kid.
Is that what they're all for E? They're all here for the Kittredge thing?
Yeah.
Wait, what is that? The Child and Family Services? So we'll do that next.
Yep.
Or we'll do that last.
Everybody's wrong, so I'll eat the pizza.
Oh, man. Is she in charge of the pizza?
Something tells me, yeah.
Beautiful.
We wouldn't know.
Okay. I know. Okay. Cool. Very good. You're welcome. Okay. I might have to refine it.
Whatever.
Okay. I'll get it in the paper and then we'll sort it out.
It's not allowing me to have presentation on my screen and have it on my notes or whatever. But I have them written down so I can make it more.
When are you going to be in it? Because I'm going to handle this tomorrow or Friday.
Look at it.
Give me the
I'll have it up here in a second.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Just you? Okay. The same thing, the unincorporated association?
Correct. It just, this has to be changed as an individual.
Okay. And just you? Cool, I'll handle it. All right, you ready, Blair? All right.
Come to order, please.
We're going to hear from Blair. He's going to have his 15 minutes, and then we are going to discuss the Kittredge,
Yes.
8E. So, Blair, you are recognized, my good man.
Right. President, Council, thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Blair Knox. I am the Director of Regional Affairs for the California Independent Petroleum Association. Yes, we do lobby. That's what we do. We represent about 160 producers throughout the state of California, including producers here in the LA Basin. When this whole fracking thing started, we decided to create a coalition. That coalition is very broad. That's the Californians for Energy Independence. And yeah, we spend money on campaigns because, frankly, we're being attacked. And so that's why we're here. I have a lot of jobs with California Independent Petroleum Association, but for the practical purposes tonight, I'm the talking head from the oil industry. That's what I am, so let's just put it out there. A lot of people don't trust the oil industry. I get that. There have been problems in the past, and there's going to be problems in the future. That's just people. People make mistakes. So I'm here today. I'm going to present some information, not coming from the oil industry, but coming from scientists and regulators from throughout the country and right here in California about what hydraulic fracturing is and the safety of it. As mentioned, there is no hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas in the city of Los Angeles. For oil and gas in the city of Los Angeles, there actually is hydraulic fracturing here, done by Department of Waste. They inject biosolids from your waste streams in San Pedro into deep wells. Then they take the gas off that, burn that, and create electricity, about 5 megawatts. So there is hydraulic fracturing that happens in the city of Los Angeles, but it's not for oil and gas. There's also no production in the city of Van Nuys, in the community of Van Nuys. And we have been in the process of implementing of SB4. SB4 was a bill that was passed last year, the toughest regulatory standards of any place in the country. We did negotiate on it. The gentleman mentioned that we opposed some regulations. At the end, we removed our opposition to SB4 in the past. The LA Planning Department just issued a report recommending the city secure outside expertise, as mentioned. The staff does not have that expertise currently. There's been significant misinformation about production techniques such as hydraulic fracturing. BLM commissioned a study with the California Council of Science and Technology studying the environmental impact of hydraulic fracturing right here in California. And they confirmed, this has been confirmed by many agencies and officials, that there has been no groundwater contamination and no earthquakes. CCST, the California Council of Science and Technology, confirmed what others have said. Examples such as listed up here on the screen, California Science and Technology, LA Chief Analysts, the amount of water being used for hydraulic fracturing. 300 acre feet sounds like a lot of water. The gentleman mentioned some water wells in Kern County. Actually, there's water that's so clean in Kern County that we sell it for agricultural purposes. We sell about 40,000 acre feet a year. So we're actually putting more water back into the system than we're taking out by significant amounts. Thank you. It's a long night.
Yeah, it's getting longer because we have to stay to the end.
So the EPA, Department of Conservation, State Water Control Board have all said no evidence of significant water use or cause contamination here in the state of California. Earthquakes. Both state and federal have said that hydraulic fracturing does not cause earthquakes, but there have been earthquakes associated with oil and gas production. It comes with injection of wastewater. This has happened in other states where the regulatory program wasn't what it is here in California. We've had a program for years. In fact, we are required in many instances to inject water back into the formations to keep the ground from subsiding, from having it drop. So there is a program to make sure that works. And what you really want is when you're pulling a bunch of fluid out, is to put fluid back in so you're stabilizing the formation. It's when you pull it out too fast or pressure it in too fast that you have problems. We're not allowed to do that here in the state of California. Again, Department of Conservation, Department of Interior, scientists from Stanford all have said there's not a problem here. Oil production is heavily regulated. In fact, there are 20 federal, state, and local agencies that regulate oil and gas. In 2013, enacted SB4. There's a bunch of things to SB4 that make it one of the toughest regulatory programs in the nation and really in the world. First, California is going to do a review, California Environmental Quality Act review. That's very substantive. Covers a wide range of areas, including air quality, water quality, seismic activities, traffic, biological resources, you name it, it covers it. And it's all public information where the public can make comments on the draft and have an input. Independent scientific study. Actually, the state is using the same group, the California Center for Science and Technology, to do their study. It's going to be more comprehensive than BLM's. and that should be out sometime after the first of the year. New permitting process. For the first time, well stimulation is going to be permitted in the state of California. It was done under, complicated how to explain it. You turn in your information of what you're going to do to the state, they reviewed it, and they gave you approval, but not a specific permit. A permit requires CEQA to cover it. If you're just getting approval, it doesn't require CEQA. So we are now going to be under CEQA for all of our well stimulation. Neighborhood notifications, if you're within a certain distance from a well that's using well stimulation, you will be notified. And all this information will also be on the website. Disclosures, all our water, all our fluids, all our sand, all our chemicals are being and have been disclosed to regulators, and they are public information. You go on the Division of Oil and Gas's website, you can find it. You can also go on, it's a whole different set of, we have to report twice. We report to the state, and we also report to South Coast Air Quality Management District. They passed a rule about a year ago requiring us to give them that same information. So there's two places where you can get that information. Well integrity testing before and after. The gentleman mentioned well casing failures. This is to ensure that the well casing has the integrity to take the pressure of a hydraulic fracturing job or other well stimulation before you actually do it. And also test afterwards to make sure there was no leaks or problems with it. Groundwater monitoring, or monitoring the water before, during, and after a hydraulic fracturing or well stimulation job. So those are all going. This is a clip from Interior Secretary Sally Jewell. I don't think we have enough sound for everybody to hear it. She basically says if you do hydraulic fracturing correctly, there's not a problem. Job numbers, we have a different opinion on the job numbers. The 48,715, the number we use, actually comes from the LA County Economic Development Corporation. They did a study in 2012, so it's not our number, it's theirs. Same with the 5.7 billion in labor income and 5.1 billion in state and local taxes. There are plenty of benefits. The jobs, the revenues, the local government, the critical services, police, fire, parks, county health, and more. Losing this would have a significant impact on the city. Also want to mention, you folks all talked about getting roads improved. Asphalt, petroleum products, we produce that. Most of the asphalt that's produced in California, major roads, is produced right here in the state of California. So you're creating those jobs locally when you want to get your roads paved and get those up to speed. California is the third largest oil producer, even though we produce 58,000 barrels per day. We still only produce about 37% of what's consumed here. So what's not produced here is either taken in from foreign countries or Alaska, or recently we're starting to see crude coming in by rail. That's a new development. There are no pipelines that come into California, so what isn't produced here, you have to bring it in from elsewhere. Real quickly, just to finish up, the ban being pushed by Food and Water Watch, it's not based on science. The scientists have come out and said, if you do it right and regulate it correctly, it can be done safely. This is really about shutting down oil production in the city of Los Angeles. Oil production has been happening for well over 100 years here. It's been done safely, can continue to happen, and would have negative impacts on the city budget and services. Before I finish, I'm going to go back to a comment he made about Allenco. Allenco has a production facility. He showed to you where there's a children's home across the street. Allenco didn't get shut down. They voluntarily shut down. And South Coast put a bunch of air monitors around their facility, and they kept finding these spikes in air quality around their facility. Once they shut down, they continue to have those same spikes. Nothing changed. So the air quality problems were not coming from the production facility, they were coming from something else, which South Coast still hasn't figured out. So, I don't know what else to say about that, but there are more than one-sided story on these things. And I just hope you go with that. My name is Blair Knox. If you have any questions or comments, that's how to get a hold of me. Email address is the best. And happy to take any questions. And
Why don't we have open question? Let's bring the other gentleman in too. Now we'll have about 3 minutes of questioning, back and forth.
Mr. Luna, let's start with you.
I got a few questions. So my questions are coming from the fact that this is a really complex technical issue,
Yes.
which I'm trying to wrap my head around. So I thank you both for the concise presentation. My first question is to Mr. Foley. It seems as if there's, at least in my mind, an ambiguity as to the type of methods used. The individuals that are getting the royalty checks, are they using conventional oil or fracking techniques?
Talking about royalty checks, I don't have any information on.
Well, I mean, just the individuals in this county.
Yeah, but that relies on property that they own. And with the way we're doing disclosure, Mr. Knox mentioned that he has to double disclose to South Coast Air Quality Management and Dogger. Their records are actually not in sync. Those disclosures are supposed to happen within 60 days, but we've found hundreds of instances where disclosures don't line up across agencies. So we only know what we know when it gets disclosed. And we don't, there is an ambiguity as to what's going on because it's not all cleanly disclosed. 2 years ago, we didn't have any of this process. And it wasn't until communities like South LA, Food and Water Watch, and other organizations across the state really pushed for these kinds of regulations like SB4 that we finally got some disclosure. We're still coming up to speed on, information regarding royalty owners, and I don't discount any of the money that people are receiving. I know that those checks help people. But our moratorium, or our original motion, does not intend to shut down conventional oil production. And there's still about 40 to 50% of conventional wells online, as far as I can tell. But it's really hard to have a full grasp of that. Like, if you see the disclosure website, it's literally clicking on dots and digging through documents.
Got it. My last question is for Mr. Knox. On your first or second slide, it mentioned that there was no fracking in LA. Is that correct?
for oil and gas production.
Right. So I think what we're discussing, the scope of what we're discussing is something that's specific to LA. So here's my question. If there's no fracking in LA, and this is specific to LA, why do you oppose this?
Because LA is the second largest city in the nation.
But there's no fracking, is what I'm asking.
Right.
Why do you oppose something that doesn't occur here?
Because, well, they're going beyond fracking. They're going into water flood. They're going into steam injection. All things that we've been using for 50, 60 years here in California. It's not just hydraulic fracturing that they're talking about. They're talking about other forms of production, actually, that we use on a regular basis and have for a long time. You bet.
Okay, I
Well,
have,
Paul had his hand up before you. So, Mr. Anand.
Okay, so thank you both for coming here and presenting to us. It's been very educational. But, so I guess this question is directed towards Mr. Foley. You had said, like, for example, I'm sorry, Mr. Knox.
okay, thank you.
You had mentioned, like, for example, that in Allen Coast situation, EPA put it up, or I'm sorry, AQMD put up sensors, they couldn't find out where it was going. But as I understand, and maybe you can educate me on this, but as I understand it, many of these techniques actually cause more cracks, for that lack of a better word, underground, so that you could cause leaks of methane, or other natural gases that are under the ground, for example, or some of the stuff that's being put into the ground that could then come up from other places. So why would that then not be attributable to the initial point of drilling?
So the oil and gas is trapped underground by an impermeable layer. Sorry, it's a tough word for me at this late at night. And we go through that, and we put our casing down, we cement around the casing so it pushes out into the formation, so there are no avenues around the formation. So when you do hydraulic fracturing, you are increasing the size of the fractures that are already there. This is already a well-fractured formations here in Southern California, both by faulting and by.
He wasn't referring to fracturing, he was referring to putting like acids into the ground, which would then leach out through those fractures, as opposed to an existing fracture that was being expanded.
Right. So the majority of hydraulic fracturing for oil in California happens very deep. It's about a mile or two below the ground, in the ground. Your water table is no more than about anywhere between 100 to 1,000 feet. So you really have almost a mile or more of rock between what we're doing downhole and the water table.
Except to piggyback on that, there have been recent documents and leaks and information in Pennsylvania as well in California that found out that oil drillers were actually using these techniques down to 2,000 feet, even though we always thought the limit was about 10,000. And I can provide that to the board.
Let me finish that, because we do hydraulically fracture here in California shallow. On the west side of Kern County, where about 95% of the hydraulic fracturing happens, we're fracturing very shallow. But the first fluid you encounter when you drill is an oil-bearing zone. There is no fresh water out in that area. So there's nothing to impact.
Right, so you're talking about water, which I agree water is very important
You bet.
in this fracturing debate. But what I'm referring to is air quality. And what we're doing is we're releasing all of these chemicals into the air. And those chemicals, beyond having, you may mention benzene, but methane, all these other chemicals are terrible polluters that then can affect stuff like, whether you believe in global warming or not, definitely should have some carbon in the air, and release in the air is going to have some effect. So, the pollutants should not only be focused only on the underground water table. What's being done about, I know AQMD is responsible, but AQMD goes and it requires EVR across the place. Are they forcing that kind of requirement of monitoring and of recapturing of those gases that are being emitted, for example?
Absolutely. In California, we are not allowed to leave an open hole. We have to capture everything. Even before we move the well stimulation equipment off and put the production facility on, equipment on, we have to capture all that and make sure it doesn't get into the
But if
atmosphere.
it's fractured and it can escape through the fractures, I don't understand how
But
you
those
capture
fractures
it.
never reach the surface.
State regulates it anyhow.
Right. Where you're going to see more of your gas leaks is actually in storage and transportation of gases. Gas is a very high energy particle, and it's very hard to contain. So even though we have regulations in place that say we have to capture everything, a large majority of where we're seeing data come in about methane leaks across the country is out of infrastructure, storage containers, pipelines, shipping. You're never going to be able to contain gas completely. And Los Angeles infrastructure has about a 17% passage leak rate out of its gas infrastructure already.
Okay, Ms. Huff.
Okay, I have a problem with quite a bit of what you said, Mr. Foley, because much of what you said was very ambiguous. You had no proof, no substantiation. You talked about a letter, there's no copy of it. You made a lot of statements. Hold on, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. You made a lot of statements, but you don't have any proof for that. Now, having said that, you, sir, I worked for ARCO for 15 years, and I took a lot of training, and I was very involved with 7 of those years. 8 of those years were with the corporate division. And I will tell you, I have no love lost. I sued them. But that's another story. The point is, I want you to know that I'm not saying this because I favor them. because I was upset with him for personal reasons. It had to do with injury on the job. Never mind that. The point is, he is absolutely correct when he states of how strict and stringent the rules are and how much they have to follow them, and there are regulations, and they do have people go out and check it, and they're very, very sincere about making sure these things don't happen. And when he was talking about people getting sick and the people that went out to investigate it, maybe, but then when he states that it had nothing to do with it because you're mixing apples and oranges, they had the AQMD out there and they still don't know why after the fact that it's there. It's like, wait a minute. And this fellow is engaging in scare tactics because they do have to cap it. It doesn't leak out. There's huge differences of space, and I just want you to know that that's not, you're getting misinformation. That's all I want you to know. All right, go ahead.
All right, we're gonna finish with Derek.
Any public comments about this?
Let's talk about something really fast. There are strict regulations, there are rules that the oil and gas industry follows, but in my mind, it's fairly simple. There are problems, and when problems happen like that, people die. People are affected. That's a serious problem. Even though there's strict regulations, accidents happen, and those accidents equate into loss of life. That's something I'm not prepared to vote for, so I'm going to be in full support of this ordinance. And I'm also, I believe in Los Angeles and its goal to become a green city. This does not, the oil gas industry does not align with those goals. Mayor Garcetti is very clear on where he's trying to take this city. I think this is a good step in that direction, so I'll be voting to support this.
Thank you.
I want to get back to the water because we know it was reported in the Los Angeles Times that our aquifers are down to 1/3. It's a very scary look, like a puddle drying up. And so this kind of technology, steam injection, whatever, it does require water. And for this reason, I really don't think it belongs in California. And though people talk about jobs and how it helps our economy, there are people up in the Central Valley who don't have any water coming out of their faucets right now. They're having to drink out of a plastic bottle the way you just did. And I would like to say that if it's known that California is starting to run out of water, and that if you live here with your family, you might not have water in the summer months, there might not be places to go to swim, it's going to affect our economy too, the way bad air does. And I think that we should all think about water as our most precious resource. And whatever is under the ground, I do think, like tobacco, they tell us now those chemicals are not going to hurt us, and the industry tried to defend their business for a very long time. I'm assuming you don't smoke, because now you know, now we all know, and those of us try to give it up. I think we should take that into consideration. We know water is good for us. I don't think these chemicals are. For that reason, I think fracking should not be something Los Angeles does.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely, Blair.
Okay. When you produce oil, actually what you're producing mostly is water. The formation we bring it out of down Long Beach is 97% water, a little bit of gas, and a little bit of oil. We joke that we're water companies that produce a little bit of oil. So that water that we produce, we separate out, and we re-inject it right back into the formation it came from, and use that to push the oil back to the wellbore and do the cycle over again, over and over and over again. We produced about 3 billion barrels of water last year. Almost all of it goes back to the formation it came from. So very little fresh water is used. There are certain circumstances where the water is so clean that we can sell it, but there are circumstances where it's not, and we put it right back to where it came from, actually cleaner than when we brought it out.
Maybe we should purify the water.
We're going to end with Mr. Dixon. Mr. Dixon's had his hand up, and then we will be, all right.
Ma'am, you're out of order.
No, there's no.
You're out of order.
Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, as a royalty owner, I got one very big confusing thing in my mind. We are sitting here discussing, as far as I know, about some regulations that pertain specifically to Los Angeles city area. And what I hear is people going sideways on what in the hell has happened back east, in other parts of California. We have a sand environment, and it's like a bowl, and it's sitting on top of the, I think it's a Paleozoic or Mesozoic layer or whatever it is, and you just have a shell with a bunch of sand on the top. Okay, everybody else has got rock. So why do we talk about what's happening and all these other people? Because I think the whole purpose of this, what we're trying to get together and talk about and make regulations for right now is pertaining to the city of Los Angeles. Who cares, from my point of view, what's happening in Northern California, Kentucky, Virginia, any of those places? I think it's all irrelevant.